on here. Hello, everybody. It's 4 o'clock, so we'll get the Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting started for June 21st. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the May 17th meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder to accept those? Mover and second. All those in favor? Great. Thank you very much. So the next committee meeting will be on July 19th, 2023 at 4 o'clock here in Council Chambers. Are there any additions and deletions to the agenda? I have one here. Council Wolf?
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to add 7A, which is about air quality monitoring, which is related to something we learned at the Metro Vancouver Council of Councils.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Any other additions? Another addition? Yeah.
And only if committee agrees, I may be making a referral depending on an update I need related to 5 and Cambie, the intersection.
5 and Cambie. Okay. So 7B will be 5 and Cambie. I'm sure you mean updates. Yeah. Okay.
Again, it's all depending on the current update.
All right,
I may make a referral that
says.
Committee will accept it.
All right. Sounds good. Any other changes or additions, deletions to the agenda? Have seen none. All those in favor? Okay, we're good. So our very first item on the agenda is our delegations. We have Nathan Devanovich to provide additional information on the 480 bus and bus service in Richmond. That's you. Come and make yourself comfortable. Please push the mic quite close to your mouth. It's really hard for us to hear people when they sit over there. So just bring it nice and close. There you go. Well done.
That's good. You hear me okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh. Thank you very much, Chair and committee members. Here is a little bit of a brief history of transit in Metro Vancouver. In the 1970s, I attended UBC, and in 1973, the AMS Students' Council appointed me as the transit liaison officer. I've been a transit advocate now for over 50 years. In 1973, there were only 2 bus routes to UBC from Vancouver and a commuter-run bus by the students from West Vancouver. We advocated and launched petitions for new bus routes to UBC. And just prior to COVID, we had 14 bus routes going to UBC. The GVRD was very supportive, and that's Metro Vancouver now. And when they became responsible for transit in 1979, the first new bus route was the Richmond UBC bus service, which was introduced in September of 1979. However, the BC government took away transit function from the GVRD in 1983, and we got BC Transit. In 1999, BC Transit was split to create TransLink that had elected politicians on its board. However, in 2007, a new act was passed creating an unelected TransLink board of directors. The municipalities had very little influence on transit services after the BC government bought BC Electric in the 1960s. Before that, there were individual franchise agreements with BC Electric, and municipalities could also advocate with the Public Utilities Commission. So we have none of that, and TransLink since 2008 has been mostly closed to the public and elected city councils. Many bad decisions have been made. Even the independent transit commissioner position was eliminated in 2014. BC Ferry still has an independent ferries commissioner. So the need to change the process has to be changed. Now, but the 480 bus, that was a very successful bus carrying just over 1 million riders in 2019, including retired Councillor Harold Steve's, they used to take it. TransLink, without any consultation or advance notice, canceled the bus route in April 2020. They say, just because there are other alternatives to get to UBC by public transit. However, every time you make riders transfer, you lose up to 25% of your original riders. In 2019, there were 66 trips to UBC and 62 trips from UBC. In January 2020, they cut it down to 30 trips to UBC and 30 trips from UBC, and then they canceled the whole bus route. We now know that ridership during the daytime in 2023 is the same or even higher than the pre-COVID ridership. It's time to bring back all the cutbacks that were done in 2020, including cuts to other Richmond bus routes. Most other transit systems have returned to their pre-COVID schedule, and some are actually increasing services. COVID is gone, and we should do all we can to increase the mode share of transit and active transportation in the Lower Mainland. The mode share has not changed much over the last 40 years. Over 80% of the trips are done by cars. Richmond should copy from the North Shore municipalities and do a proper transportation survey. TransLink last survey was done in 2017. I hope this committee will advocate for more transit and active transportation and hear from everyone that wants to make presentation. I understand that 2 years ago, one of the advocates for the return of the Steveston line was not allowed to present his proposal. So thank you very much for your hearing me.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair to the delegate. You had sent, I think, all of us an email. I didn't go through all the websites, but it was the Capital Regional District, their Traffic Safety Committee. Could you elaborate on what value that might offer to Richmond, that model of having a traffic safety committee?
Yes, I mean, that's item 3 on your agenda. There is no question that would offer lots of value to the city of Richmond, and it would offer more value if you copy or ask the Metro Vancouver to copy the Capital Regional District, where they have a regional traffic safety commission. And because, I mean, the border doesn't stop in Richmond. I mean, people, so we need traffic safety is needed all over Metro Vancouver. We have one of the highest number of accidents and deaths in the province, and ICBC, from my talking to them, they seem to rely on the municipalities or municipal staff to bring to them what money should be spent or on which intersection, but it's really, I mean, they could save lots of money if they, spend the money on the right intersection and do a proper Vision Zero analysis, which hasn't been done for the Lower Mainland. I mean, some municipalities have accepted Vision Zero, but
Thank you
very
much.
little is done.
That's
Yeah.
on the agenda coming up, so we'll hear from staff on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah.
Having no other questions, our next speaker is James Yu to present on the 480 bus route.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank this committee for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. My name is James Yu. I'm a 19-year-old PhD student of economics at UBC, a lifelong Richmond resident, and the initiator of the petition to restore the suspended 480 express bus between Bridgeport Station and UBC. I am not affiliated with the previous speaker, but I would like to thank him for his comments today. I've been a user of the 480 for more than a decade, ever since I was very small, but I'm not here to dwell on the standards of the past and decades gone by. That is not productive. It's not the 80s anymore, it's not even the 2010s. This isn't my first rodeo, and if there's anything I've learned over the past year, it's that TransLink has to see the 480 as a benefit now, today. They have the final say, and if they don't want to bring it back, they won't. The only way forward is to flip their perspective in a logical manner. A couple of months ago, TransLink announced the 480 service would be permanently removed without conducting any public consultation like they did for other routes. So I stepped in and did TransLink's job for them. I did this consultation myself. 700 individuals and counting signed my petition, almost 300 individuals signed my direct letter to TransLink, and I received 60 individual written anecdotes about the commute. This campaign spanned posters, social media, an article in the Richmond News, an article in UBC's student newspaper, an extensive promotion by UBC's AMS Student Union. This includes a letter that the AMS sent to TransLink today, endorsing some of the improvements I have suggested for the 480 route. In these anecdotes, UBC students indicated that the biggest problem with the commute without the 480 is the added length and complexity. Many students at UBC are unable to afford to live near campus because of the housing crisis. However, the commute between UBC and more affordable cities, such as Richmond, is now extremely difficult. Commute times can be up to 2 hours or more, and if you're standing on a train or bus all the way to UBC while having to walk for transfers in between, by the time you get to campus, you're stressed, you're tired, and you're unable to learn. And you're not comfortably waiting for each transfer. You're waiting in torrential rain because this is Richmond, this is Vancouver. We get rain in the winters. Now double that 2-hour runtime because students also need to get back home from UBC, and you have a recipe for severely destroying the mental health of commuter students. This is what students have told me happened to them. And I know this is true because it also happened to me. Some students do not currently take transit at all. They drive because driving is now 3 to 4 times faster with how slow the R4 Rapid Bus is. This increased carbon emissions and worsened traffic on the UBC corridor. These students indicated that they would not be driving if the 480 were back in place. And of course, there is also the potential for hybrid options going forward. My best friend used to get driven to Bridgeport Station before joining me on transit to UBC and back. If the 480 were in place, that option would be more viable for countless students across the region. Key regional connections, such as the 480, improve the commute in all aspects, making our cities a better place for students to live, work, and play while improving mental health. For example, many students take up part-time jobs to afford tuition, and many students want to access better, more affordable dining options in Richmond, which would also boost our economy. Because the 480 was removed, students told me they aren't able to do any of this. They had to give up on opportunities that Richmond could have provided them with. This, all of what I've said on behalf of these students, is what happens when we destroy regional connectivity and overcrowd alternative lines. Clearly, there is a pressing need for the restoration of this key regional connector. If TransLink has the capacity to restore West Vancouver service and fund all the new summer service expansions that Councillor Day notified about me yesterday by email, are they not able to listen to our concerns too? Do they not care about the mental health and well-being of students in our region? I find it to be extreme negligence on TransLink's part for not considering all options for maintaining the service before making the region-altering decision to suspend the 480. You will find in the agenda docket my multi-point list of improvements that will make the 480 more efficient and sustainable to operate. It's this kind of innovative and careful thinking that I wish TransLink conducted before they cut the service with no consultation and impacted the lives of thousands of UBC students. I'm an economist, I'm a full-time PhD student, and while some people will call me a transit enthusiast, I'm not TransLink staff. This innovative thinking about restoring the route isn't supposed to be my responsibility, but here I am. TransLink needs to step up, listen, and do their job as a public organization. To that end, my request for this committee is to determine whether it would be possible to establish communications between city staff and TransLink staff, starting with a memorandum on council's behalf to TransLink regarding support for the 480 service with today's information, my petition, and my list of improvements in the agenda docket in mind. It is important to maintain ongoing conversations when it comes to advocacy, even in the face of resistance. Thank you for your time. This concludes my prepared statement.
Thank you. You have a question from Councillor Heed?
Correct?
Yes. Thank you very much. My hat's off to you for taking the initiative to do this. And are you an undergrad student and you're going into PhD?
No, I have already completed my first year of the PhD program. I am entering my second year.
And you're 19 years old?
I am 19 years old, that's correct.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, now to my question. Have you reached out and had any discussion with TransLink whatsoever?
I have, yes.
And what have they told you?
This information is contained within the agenda docket. They told me that their reasons for not reinstating the route are that the 480 would be approximately 1 to 4 minutes slower. However, this is under optimal conditions and does not account for the fact that the R4 is too overcrowded for more students to use, and therefore we have to take the 49 service, which takes so much extra time that the 480 would in fact be faster.
Bunch of bureaucracy, my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Al?
Yeah, I have one question and one suggestion.
Just wait. Okay, there you go.
I have one question and one suggestion. Now, you have over 700 people signed the petition already,
Correct.
right? So, do you know if all of them are living in Richmond?
I believe a very large amount of them in Richmond. Some of them are in Vancouver, Ladner, Surrey, and other regions in the province.
Okay, so has the petition finished already?
The petition, you could consider it finished, however, it is open for additional signatures as this is an ongoing issue.
So when are you going to submit?
I have already submitted it. However, the terms and service of the website that I use to support the 700 signature petition do not allow me to release the names as people are allowed to opt out. This is why I have a separate 300 signature letter where I do have the names released. This is what I also sent to TransLink. I believe this was at the beginning of the month. I have not heard back from them.
My suggestion is that you submit a copy of your petition to TransLink to us, to the city. And I would also suggest that we may refer to staff to follow up on the petition with TransLink.
Okay.
We have a question from Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. Your suggestion of taking our staff meeting with TransLink staff, wouldn't we need a stronger position if this committee, I'm not on this committee, but council would, a stronger position by putting it in writing? I remember when we started the first route to UBC, David, you remember way back when, and it was like eureka, holy cats, this was great. We still have lots of students in Richmond who go to UBC, SFU,
Yes.
and other universities, and I think through the chair at the right time, in addition to the delegates' suggestion, but I would suggest as a councillor, and I'm supported at council, a very strongly worded letter to TransLink to say that we would want this reinstated, and for reasons reinstated, and not to be studied. We need it now.
Yes.
And because we have the clientele in the same light when we wanted the increased bus to Steveston. So I leave that to the chair or some member of the committee here, but I would support it if it comes to council that way on Monday.
Okay, and Councillor Heed?
Yeah, sorry for coming back to this. I've gone from one side to the other on this, and probably thanks to this young fella here. And I think we need to do something stronger than a letter. I think we need to have, and we know the mayor sits on the TransLink board, that's fine. But I would like to see the key decision maker in TransLink sit in front of council and explain what's going on so we can ask that person those questions with respect to that. That'll go far greater than a letter, in my opinion, rather than letting this just go to a letter. I strongly believe that is, we need to hear.
Thank you. And I think before we make the decision on what the motion should be, I think we should probably hear from staff, because I know they've been meeting with TransLink and they may be able to offer even more intel than what we've received from the two speakers. I actually had a question myself. So they say, TransLink, that the new route is better and faster and more efficient, but you're basically the guinea pigs on the wheel that have been running around. What would you say is the fundamental difference between the old option, the 480, and the new option of getting to UBC from Richmond?
Right. As I mentioned in my speech, the new option requires additional transfers through services. The difference between the 480 and the R449 options in the Canada Line, these options are designed to carry people from much wider spaces of regions across the lower mainland. For example, the R4 carries passengers from Burnaby, Coquitlam, and Surrey, whereas the 480 starts in Richmond, and that's essentially the first stop. The 480 is designed for our region. So what we're doing right now is we're sharing space with routes that are already overcrowded with passengers from other regions. This makes it extremely difficult to access these services, and throughout most of my first PhD year, I have not been able to use the R4 in the inbound direction to UBC. There is just not enough space, and this is what I have heard from others.
So that's been that full. So what was the ridership like on the 480 before it was canceled?
Ridership on the 480, the 480 is a peak hour service, so all the buses that run in the peak direction, that is towards UBC in the morning, out of UBC in the afternoon, were all full. These are all full buses.
Okay, and then I would imagine they had less frequency of the buses at other times of the day?
Correct, yes. Okay. Either less frequent or non-operational, as the 480 is a targeted peak hour service.
All right, if there's no other questions, I thought we'd ask our manager, Lloyd B., to come up and answer some of these questions. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks for all your hard work and advocacy. Appreciate that. Do you have anything to add to some of the comments that you've heard around the table?
Madam Chair, I guess what I can add is that when the 480 was originally removed from service, it was intended to be a temporary situation due to the pandemic. Of course, during the pandemic, the ridership out to UBC was a bit low. In March this year, we did receive a letter from TransLink indicating that they were canceling the 480 permanently and that the other alternates were actually better. When James here came forward and discussed his petition and his experience, I do trust that TransLink will listen to this, maybe do a little bit more measuring and figure out what they need to do. From a transportation perspective, the 480 is great, but if they have capacity on the R4 and other routes, and if they are indeed better, if that's suitable as well, in my opinion. However, if they're overcrowded and in fact take way longer, I think TransLink needs to either increase the capacity on those routes that they say are faster, or find a better route or complementary route such as the 480 to fulfill the service.
Okay, I think Councillor Hobbs has a question.
Thanks, and through the chair, yeah, just in some of the discussion and I think material, it was mentioned that the route was cut in half in, I think, January of 2020, so that's pre-pandemic. Do we know why it was cut in half at that time?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I don't, but I suspect it was due to ridership.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we have Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First off, do you think it would be possible to add a second council rep to the TransLink board, so in addition to Mayor Brody?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's outside of my experience. I think that would be something you could ask Mayor Brody.
Like, do you happen to know, through the chair staff, if other municipalities have more than one?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, no. In my experience, and I attend the Mayor's Council meetings with Mayor Brody, I have not seen more than one representative from another community in my time in this position.
Okay. My next question to staff is, when you've been attending these meetings and you've heard from TransLink staff, do you have the feeling that they're quite knowledgeable about how traffic transit actually works in the region? Do you feel like they're experts in the field?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yeah, like they are the experts on and the transit authority for the region.
Next question is, when is the next time that TransLink is receiving a tax payment from the city of Richmond?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I do not know that information or how the taxes are transferred to them, but we can probably find out if that's the direction from the committee.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to give that direction, and also, because I've never been privy to that, if there's ability to negotiate. So if we're not getting the service, maybe we can negotiate transferring less. If you can take that up.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, like, I guess what I'd say to that is that our financial relationship with TransLink is quite deep. It there's a lot of money that goes back and forth, including for the major road network maintenance and such other things. So while the 480 and Canada Line, etc., are excellent services that serve Richmond, the 480 is just part of it. So I'd consider that when I was moving forward.
I'd like to make a motion on time. Or do you have a question first?
Yeah, well, I think Councillor Heed was going to make the first motion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so Councillor Heed, your motion was to write a letter, but also invite the TransLink rep to come here and answer to council about the cancellation of the 480. Is there something else?
Yes, I think it should be specific to that. We can get of course, an update. And I got to tell you, Councillor Wolf, as much as we think we can kind of threaten our way into this, there's no way. They are a very, very qualified group of people at TransLink, and they're and I think, you would agree with me. We've got that expertise there. The financial arrangement, I believe, is controlled by some type of legislation provincial legislation, and we can't get out of that. And you're right, we have benefited. We have one of the best SkyTrain lines, the Canada line from here to Vancouver, and I just wish that would go straight to White Rock one day. But again, we've benefited from what TransLink is offering. What our dilemma is right here, and what the young fellas brought forward, is something that I think if there is a will to do it within local government, I think TransLink will certainly take a stronger look at it. And I think that's the outcome we want to see. We don't want to fracture the relationship we have with TransLink.
I agree. So your motion then is to write a letter along with the petition to?
Not necessarily with the petition. I think they should keep that separate. I think we should write a letter outlining our concerns with respect to that, and ask that they have their representative come forward to a council meeting to give us a brief update and, be open to questions regarding specifically this.
Okay, I have a seconder for that? Second? All right, any discussion? Councilor Wolf?
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment, unless council committee would feel I should have it as a separate one. But my original motion would have been to the language around a letter to return the 480 bus, but in addition to that, request that TransLink restore all bus schedules in Richmond that were cut during COVID to pre-COVID schedules.
I think we're dealing with just the 480. So that would require a vote to amend the motion.
If you'd like, then I can rescind that, and then we can bring that up when the representative comes.
I think that's two entirely different directions. One is an overreaching, and whereas this is more specifically, and we can get to it quicker for the 480. So we'll just, I think, unless there's no objection.
Well, then, one more comment then on that is if the TransLink rep delays coming here for 2-3 months, then then we're not getting the 480 bus in time for the new students in the new semester in the fall. So that's why I think it's more critical that we get the ask in as soon as possible with a letter for both this bus service and all, because other municipalities around the country and world have gone back to the pre-COVID levels and above. And we're still struggling to catch
Okay,
up.
let's have some more discussion before we make that decision if we're going to go with that. There you go, Councillor Al.
Yeah, I just want to clarify about the letter. So are we just inviting them to come to talk to us, or are we in the letter saying that we want this 480 bus be reinstalled?
Yeah. Councillor Heed will clarify his motion.
For them to come at the letter to address what our concern is, specific to the 480.
Yeah.
And they come to us to give us a brief update, and I think we can probably include what Councillor Wolf is asking for, but not specific to that. At the end of the day, we want the 480 back.
Yes.
And I think we've got to keep our focus on that. If we open this up too large, you're right, Councillor Wolf, we're going to be waiting 3 or 4 years before anything gets done. But if we can just start out by getting this 480 back in, get our students for the fall back to the university, and let them know this is very important to our community here in Richmond, I think I'm hoping we'll be successful.
So I'm leaning towards hearing Councillor Heed's motion as presented, because I think we have consensus on that. And then we can come back to you, Councillor Wolf, if you want to make an additional motion. Okay. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Good, that passes. I'll go back to Councillor Wolf then, if you want to make an additional motion, or do you want to think about it, or do you want to talk to staff?
No, I think, through the chair, I would like to make a separate motion then, and that we request that TransLink restore all bus schedules that were cut during COVID to pre-COVID levels.
Okay.
And that could be in a letter, or it could just be, or I guess it would go from committee to council, and then the mayor could express that at the next mayor's council meeting instead of a letter. It could just be expressed on our behalf as a committee.
Okay, I think I'd like to ask Mr. B what he thinks. There's been a lot of changes. Do you have any comments on that?
Madam Chair, I guess my comment on that would be, I would be reluctant to do that until I saw the ridership numbers that support such a request. Even with the 480, TransLink's comments appeared to be appropriate in that they felt that the ridership was one way. Now, currently the ridership changed dramatically during the pandemic, and it's been improving since. So I'm not positive that they're even aware at this point in time what Mr. Yu has experienced. So, certainly even on the 480, I'd like to see what they think about that and if they have different data today. I'd be reluctant to ask them to restore a service that maybe had limited ridership unless I saw the ridership numbers and understood something similar like Mr. Yu's compelling case here that the alternate service is inadequate or overcrowded.
Okay, and I have Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. We don't actually have a list of what the old routes were, and because we did get some new routes after COVID in Richmond as well, right? So we're quite concerned about the 480, but in regards to looking at other routes that were lost, we don't actually, I don't know what they are.
Through
we have a list
Madam
of it?
Chair, maybe something that would be helpful is if we cataloged the changes that did happen during the pandemic and what we have today and what the difference is, and maybe that would help council or committee and staff have a discussion regarding what's happened and what's different. The one that we know for sure that's having the impact is the 480, and it's the one that I've heard the most about. To be honest, I haven't received any complaints about any other changes or routes, but the 480 has come up a number of times and has compelled Mayor Brody and myself to bring that up with TransLink on a number of occasions, which prompted the letter that we got at the end of March from their CAO regarding the ultimate closure of the route.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs, did you have something you wanted to ask? Where are you? There you are.
No, just a comment through the chair, thank you. I mean, I agree with the motion that we're looking at from Councillor Wolf, but I do think that it might be wise to do what I think is being suggested, is to have some analysis done on it so we have more detail and a more thorough understanding of what we've lost and what the ridership was and that kind of thing. And then when it comes back to committee or to council, then I think you'd have probably unanimous support if it had the right data in it.
So back to Councillor Wolf then, maybe more of a direction for a memo?
Yes, thank you. I will rescind my motion there and instead ask for committee direction to staff to catalog the changes and hopefully bring that back by the next Public Works Transportation meeting, and we can take action at that point.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Excellent suggestion, and thanks for the good advice. All right, then moving forward to item number 2. This is the Kitty-Wake Drive Traffic Calming Pilot Project Update. And staff are recommending option 3, which is to implement a pilot project for the temporary installation of 2 asphalt speed cushions on Kitty-Wake for a trial period of 6 months, as described in the report. Did you have anything to add to your report?
Nothing further to add, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Good, thank you. So really the difference, if I've got this right, is that we're going from a 9 centimeter to a 7 centimeter cushion, and that if it works out, we'll keep it. If it doesn't, then we can take it away after 6 months. And this is due to the noise and vibration that the neighbors are feeling. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Same technology in that the devices are the speed cushions. Slight change in the height, reducing it to a lower profile, and the materials being asphalt to address the vibration concerns that we heard.
All right, I think we have a question from Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you, through the chair to staff. And I am aware what I'm going to speak of might be more related to the next item, but it is the connection to Kitty-Wake Drive that I wanted to bring it up now. So we received a letter the other day on June 12th from Samara Epp about flashing lights at the end of Kitty-Wake Drive. So I just wanted to know if that at all, would that be not considered the whole traffic calming pilot of the whole route, that additional safety infrastructure at the end of the road? And it wasn't, at least we didn't, or I didn't receive what the staff response was to that. So you can either answer now or I'll delay it to the next item.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I believe the request was with respect to those special crosswalk flashers across Number 2 Road from Kittiwake to the multi-use path. Those are high demand infrastructure and comes at a cost, about $100,000. So staff base our priorities on a warrant structure. We've conducted the warrants at that location, and right now it's not meeting the threshold, and there are other priority locations in the city that are higher on the list. So we're keeping our eye on this location. It's on the radar, but it's not warranted at this time. However, with that said, staff are aware that there are concerns regarding the pedestrian environment at this location to enhance that, similar to what you see further south on Number 2 Road. We are investigating the potential to implement a raised crosswalk to slow traffic down as it approaches the intersection and improve the pedestrian crossing across the street. And we're working with stakeholders like fire right now to develop that design. And then we'll go out and consult with the affected residents afterwards.
Mr. Reid, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just to say, like, when the program on Kittiwake Drive was based on complaints regarding speeding, and when we actually did go out there and do some studies, we did find, as we've mentioned in previous reports, that there was a speeding issue. And so this report and the speed cushion solution was meant was what we came up with after a long public consultation to address that speeding issue. The crosswalk issue, it's a separate issue. It might look like it's connected, but I don't believe that it's part of the same speeding issue.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I did want to just get that clarified because I think in the way the writer had described it was walking their kids to the school. You have to go the length where these the speed cushions will be installed in addition to other unsafe areas that they had noted. So that's the kind of clarification.
Yeah, I'd like to refer you to PWT 25, and under traffic calming, staff have also received a number of complaints about Kittiwake, and they're reviewing the opportunity to install a raised crosswalk at this location. So I don't think any direction is needed at this time. I believe staff have it well under hand. All right, so any others? No other questions? So I take first, did we? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Mr. Councillor Hobbs, I do apologize.
Oh, thanks, and through the chair, I was slow on the button, sorry.
My fault.
I just wanted to echo some of the comments made by Councillor Wolf there about the crosswalk. And I know it's being studied and not directly related to the speed on Kittiwake, but just through personal experience and conversations, when you are crossing east-west, there is a bus stop there, and it's not about the speed on Kittiwake. It's about the volume of traffic on Number 2 Road and the visibility of pedestrians, even though it's only one lane each direction. So whatever staff can look at there, I'd just be fully encouraging staff to continue looking at that and come up with a solution that makes things a little bit safer for all pedestrians crossing the street there. So thank you.
All right, seeing no other speakers, do I have a motion to adopt Kittiwake Drive traffic calming first and second? All right, all those in favor? Perfect, that is passed. Item number 3 is the 2023 Road Safety Initiatives Update and Vision Zero Review. We've heard a lot about this over the last number of years. Do you have anything to add?
Madam Chair, nothing to add to the report. Available to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Councillor Wolf has a question.
Yes, thank you through the chair and staff. I think I have 2 questions. One was in relation to the schools, as on page PWT 24, under school zone pedestrian and traffic safety. It mentions in there that, and we received, what was it, last year, the report that had a map of all the elementary school sites that had safety areas identified with the principal and our city staff that met at each of the locations. My question is, are those living fluid documents, are they being updated? Because since we've seen some of those maps, major construction projects have happened within school zones. The one that I'm most familiar with is at Hamilton Elementary, and right across Hamilton Elementary, there's 2 massive projects. And where there's what may what residents were asking for a four-way stop is not a four-way stop. But really now it's become a five-way stop because the construction is coming right out into the Gillian-Smith Crescent intersection. And when those large trucks are backing out, or crane trucks or cement trucks or whatever, they're doing it right at the time when the kids are walking. My question again, going back to it, are those documents being updated? Are we asking for the principals to give the update, or are staff going in and identifying additional things that come up?
Through the chair, a couple of things. We are working on a catalog of active construction projects in the Hamilton area as directed by committee to do, and that's underway that we'll bring forward to you. With respect to coordination of those activities in the school, yes, we do talk to the principals of these schools to see if there's any issues and safety concerns. None that I'm aware of have been raised from Hamilton at this point in time, but we can certainly proactively discuss that with the school principal and find out more.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you doing that, especially with that site. I know there's other elementary schools that probably have similar concerns. I just have two more short points. The next one I just wanted to identify is on the bottom of page 27, and it was in regards to Richmond Poverty Reduction Coalition that gave a presentation at the end of a council meeting back in March. And I just wanted to thank you for what it sounds like you're going to be including them into your future the TSAC, where is this abbreviation stand for again? Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, that they're going to be now a regular member going forward?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, indeed. After the last committee meeting, the group was invited to come and present to the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee in March, and they will be on the committee going forward to present any agenda items and provide their perspective on traffic safety strategies in the city going forward.
Great, thanks, because I think that committee has a quite a valuable intake or thoughts and observations of what's needed in the community. I also wanted to just comment and share to staff the value of a presentation that I witnessed that was given by a former paramedic to a high school, where they show a slideshow and all the graphic, gory pictures with vehicles wrapped around poles, and it was very challenging for the students and probably everyone in the room to see. But and I think the presentation would be of value to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee as well. And so I'm not sure if that is something that you're interested in connecting with. I can help you make that connection. And then lastly, the last question to staff is on our page top of 29. It mentions that staff have commenced a review of lowering the speed limit in the Hamilton area, and that might be brought forward for Q4 of this year. Has there been any? Is there any insight that staff are looking for? Because I was just meeting with the Hamilton Advisory Committee last night, and there was lots of ideas that people wanted to share. So I'm not sure if you are able to attend one of those meetings between now and getting your recommendations in order, but that might be a place to go to seek information.
Okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, absolutely. If you could forward that meeting invitation to us, and staff can certainly attend.
Okay. Thank
Get
you.
you to connect them. Yeah. Thank you very much. And Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this report. Can we get data for the last 10 years for pedestrian and bike fatalities and traffic fatalities and injuries? Can we, like, separating it out between the two of those to see if there is a bit of a trend, to understand sort of where our numbers are and how we're doing? Because I think these are good initiatives, but I also think it's good for us to understand it in the context of where we are and how we're doing.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, certainly ICBC provides that data to us. We can request a longer time frame from them. Their data does lag behind, as you can see in the staff report. It's available up to 2021 currently as the most recent. What I can share, in addition to requesting additional information from them and seeing what's available, is when we did our network screening study, we reviewed the ICBC collision data, and it included the number of collisions that involved pedestrians and cyclists. And what I can say is that on a per capita basis, we are lower in terms of our collision frequency and severity compared to our neighboring municipalities. So there is some data that we do have that we look at as part of tracking and monitoring road safety in Richmond.
Okay, because certainly we want to make sure we're doing things right and making sure that we're investing in the right places. That being said, you know, we have a finite amount of money that we're spending. There are other things that happen in Richmond that cause accidents and injury and other things, and I think we want to just make sure that we're putting our money to the best value. So these projects seem great, and it makes sense to keep going with them. It just, I think we need to understand it in the greater context of, like, who all is being served and how best we're doing it.
Okay, good
Thank you.
point. Yeah. So, do we have a motion for adopting number 3, which is? Okay, second. And everyone in favor? Those opposed? All right. Let's move on to number 4, which is the 2022 Annual Water Quality Report. And basically, staff are asking that we are able to put this report on the city website, and that there be better communication tools through that. So did you want to update on the motion?
Nothing further to add, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. See. Okay, Councillor Wolf, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, through the chair to staff. Just one question. It's kind of maybe a myth busting you could do for me. I just learned recently that, or someone had said, I'd like to know if it's the truth, that where there's a lot of signs or stickers by taps in Richmond, like in schools, for example, that say non-potable water. So this is related to the Tap Water Initiative in the report on page 60. That the tap water is actually fine. It's the pipes that it goes through. And I've learned, I think I've got it accurate, that there used to be custodians, janitors who would go into all of these buildings and run the water in the morning so that throughout the day, any of the users of the building could feel safe filling up their bottles or cup directly from the tap and drinking it. But because that kind of service isn't provided by custodians and some janitors in some buildings, that now the taps are marked "do not consume." Is that the case, or is it the pipes itself just should never have water go through it and be drunk? Any thoughts on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm unaware of what's happening in the school pipe. The city water goes up to the property line, and then it would be up to the school board after that.
Well, we'll have to get some more information on that.
Try that. Okay,
All right,
thanks.
so the motion is to accept the report and to put it on the city website. And the seconder, all those in favor? Okay, perfect. Number 5 is the drainage canal bank failure repairs at 12506 Vickers Way, where we require $1 million in funding to repair the damage caused by the people in that building. Anything to add to the report?
I have nothing further to add. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, and Councillor Wolf, you have a question on this issue?
Just thank you, through the chair to staff. Just one question. I know that the report here is quite short and there's no map, but when I looked at the overhead map that I found, it looked like the property in question here is fenced off. Yet it says here that that they placed their tiles on city property. So was the stuff placed on the outside of the fence on city property?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the property adjacent to the canal here actually placed a fence on city property and then placed the tiles on city property.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So I understand, if there's no other questions, I understand that we'll be taking $1 million from the Drainage Improvement Reserve Fund, but we will be going after the owner with legal action to recoup that, correct?
That's correct.
All right, as it should be. All right, do I have a motion to move that and a seconder? Second, and all those in favor? All those opposed? All right. Number 6 is the Circular Procurement Policy Implementation Progress Update. This is a fascinating report, and we've learned a lot from these projects, and we're going to be posting this information online to inform the public. What can you tell us about it, Mr. Russell?
Nothing further to add, Madam Chair. There are a number of projects highlighted in this report, so a number of staff from different areas are here if there's detailed questions.
All right, perfect. And Councillor Wolf, you had a question of Mr. Russell?
Yeah, so thank you, through the chair to staff. So I was looking in the report for kind of where groups like the Unbuilders would be highlighted. So that's a group that would help with the demolition of buildings and taking it apart kind of piece by piece, as opposed to bringing in the big demolition equipment and smashing it all to bits and sending it to eco-waste to maybe get sorted. So where would kind of the Unbuilders or other groups, companies like that fit in to the circular procurement policy?
Well, through the chair to Councilor Wolf, the report does focus on city procurement, so if we're not procuring those services, then they wouldn't be here. I do think perhaps based on the nature of the question, it might be more appropriate or considered as part of the circular city strategy, which is broader and looks at that level of detail.
So follow up then, when we commissioned the demolition of the Mineral Aquatic Center, would have that not been a procurement to do that work, or that wouldn't fit under that, eh?
Well,
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, Martin Eunice, I think, can respond to that more appropriately.
To the chair, to Councilor Wolf, yes, it was, and following the council approved policy of waste diversion of 80%, we did that, and the circular economy was in all of our procurement documentation. We mentioned the circular economy, and we evaluate the vendors accordingly.
Oh, okay, then to follow up to that, I know this is just a progress update, but is our kind of long-term strategy better than 80%? And could we not maybe consider in the next update seeking the groups like you've done in other aspects of this report to help us get to that better place, that higher level goal?
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, the council adopted policy is 80%. Of course, staff are working, always try to improve on that. The minimum is 80%. So we always push to make it that higher. But at this time, that's what we're working towards, and that's why the circular economy is important.
Okay, wonderful, thanks.
Thank you. Well, what a great report. I mean, I think we thought when we were going to try for a circular economy, it was going to cost us money. But an excellent example of this working is on page 117, where we saved $330,000 on crumb rubber at the Hugh Boyd sports field by repurposing it. And that kept 800 kilograms, so pounds of this out of the landfill. And then on page 132, the King George Park turf was required to be replaced, and it was then converted into composite fence posts. So again, saving us money, getting rid of the debris in a smart fashion. So well done on that. Oh, Councillor Au has a question.
No question, I just want to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for the report. I think the learnings being summarized in the report is great. But I think actually the essence of the report is not in the report itself, but in the attachment. I think those stories and the learnings as summarized are great. So thank you for a great report.
Yeah, good news story. We love that.
Yeah.
All right, do I have a mover for the motion? Second, and all those in favor? Good, perfect, that's passed. Number 7 is the Dike Master Plan Phase 4 report. So this is the dike upgrades for the North Fraser section on the east side of Richmond. Very detailed report, very informative. Do you have anything to add to it?
Madam Chair, nothing to add, available for questions.
All right, Councillor Wolf, you have a question?
Yeah, big report to read through. So this was the last one, and maybe it's not as polished, my comment, but or question. So I'm a little bit hesitant to actually support this today, so I'll lead off with that. So I do acknowledge that in the recommendations on page 147, one of the 6 Summarized recommendations is habitat enhancement, and on the page earlier, 146, it talks about regulatory feedback to do that with more nature-based solutions and a habitat bank kind of system. But I'm still concerned because when I look through later on in the package by KWL, there's very little parts of this part of the dike that will actually be with a retaining wall. And why I think that's a concern with what the strategies, the direction is meant to do, habitat enhancement, is we're going to be covering over much of the ditch, the water canal, the riparian area on the inland side of River Road. There are fish in there. I live not that far away, and the ditch in front of my house connects to that, and it has fish in it right now. There's a lot of wildlife that they go through ditches, and if there's no fish, they leave. But there's many that regularly fish in these areas. The kingfisher bird, for example. You can often see them in a tree near these ditches with a big fish hanging out of their mouth. And if we're covering up so much of that water path and putting it into concrete pipes, I don't think we're going to be able to do that habitat enhancement. I don't see anywhere in the report or the recommendation of where we're going to build this place of habitat compensation. So I get that we're going to do this kind of leading way and bank this stuff. But if we're just banking it and then eventually we have other priorities and we never actually commit and follow through with the banking of habitat, then I have a concern with that.
Mr. Sparlin, for clarity, this is a report with a lot of options. We're not deciding on anything today. We're just going forward with the planning of this and try to get those answers for Councillor Wolf. Am I wrong, or?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is more an overarching document and more for planning purposes and for guidance. Certainly, each of the projects would have a more detailed design or preliminary design, which through those processes, we would have qualified environmental professionals provide that input in terms of the habitat compensation.
So is it safe to say that you'll be engaging with the public and environmental groups to find out what the best options are, that we haven't committed to filling in those ditches? That's one option of many.
Madam Chair, that's correct, and also through the province, they would have a permitting process through their Water Sustainability Act or other environmental permits that would require compensation for any loss.
Thank you. Yeah, because I had the same concerns, but then after talking to staff, I came to recognize that this was just kind of step one, and that there was a lot more to come.
Madam Chair, if I may, thanks. If I could just add that in response to Councillor Wolf's question. Certainly, this has been something we've looked at in great detail, and this fundamental arrangement where we have a large water course behind the dike is quite ubiquitous throughout Richmond, as I'm sure you'll see in many areas. It's an artifact of the original construction of the dikes. They actually just dug out and piled up next to it, so they created the ditch behind the dike as they dug out and built the dike originally. And of course, a lot of these have matured into the environmental assets you see today. The challenge we face with these, the inspector of dikes themselves won't permit dike upgrades and construction with that feature anymore. Having an open water course immediately behind your dike creates a fundamental instability with the dike, and it's a big challenge. And so certainly the response is correct. This is just a guiding document that will result in plans, but over time, we will have to move or remove most of these water courses, and as is stated in the plan, we would be hoping to compensate for those, build the compensation prior to doing the works when it's removed. But we are between a bit of a rock and a hard place. There's not a path that we see to ultimately retaining most of these water courses, but we are hoping to do the construction across the whole island in a way that will enhance and expand the environmental asset, even if it's not retaining exactly what's there today.
Okay, Councillor Wolf, you have another question?
Yeah, follow up. So if the plan, the goal is to build the habitat enhancement, the future riparian habitat prior to losing this, do we need direction to staff? Is that gonna come in a report before any work is done? It's just not clear to me, because, like, look at what happened along Dyke Road, where it was approved at kind of a phase like this, and then we saw the raised dike, and it had no multi-use path, and all the cyclists now gotta cram in with the cars on that kind of blind corner. So, I've looked through the list of outstanding referrals from council to staff, and I don't see anything in there other than the fish bank, and unless that's staff are gonna tie it to that and then come back with the report on the fish bank. I don't know, I'm just not clear that it's
Let's
really
ask
linked.
staff to follow up on that.
Yes, if I could, thank you, through you to Councillor Wolf. The plan is, and council's endorsed the habitat banking approach, so we're working with the regulatory authorities on establishing that. And what will actually happen with that, and with council's approval of the Dike Master Plan in this form that you see, it will result in us coming forward with capital projects. So we'll actually submit standalone capital projects that are purely environmental and compensation projects. That's the plan. So you will see those in the capital program, and the plan is to have those approved and built in advance of actually doing the necessary dike works that triggers the need for that compensation.
I will see that through, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll have to keep our eyes open. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the item 7? Okay, and all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Okay, 7A is the air quality monitoring. You asked to have this on the agenda, Councillor Wolf. Maybe just push it back.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, so just very briefly here, where is it here? So when I and some others here attended the Metro Vancouver Council of Councils the other day, and I spoke at the mic around adding additional air quality monitoring stations. Right now, there's one at the airport, and there's one at kind of behind McNair near Williams and Fore Road. Their response to me was that our staff should inquire about these hyper-local L1C monitoring stations that the city can ask Metro Vancouver for. So I'm not sure if anyone here would be able to, would be that point person who could reach out to Metro Vancouver and see what the arrangement would be. Do we have to pay for them? Will they just supply them? Would they be temporary? They mentioned that they could be basically hung on existing lamp stands, street lights.
Okay, see what Mr. Russell has to say.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not aware specifically of the process, but would be my area for us to look into. So if the committee wants us to direct us to do that, we will look into that. And I'm not sure of the locations that they have in consideration or qualified. What are their qualifications for citing these locations? So, I think we'd have to look into that a fair bit to understand more about the program.
Yeah.
That's just a direction to staff then?
Just before that, so they had commented that the ideal situation was that they could have one placed at every school. So it would give evidence to the school or the city around idling emissions in the front of school. It also could be related to, we just had a discussion a month ago around the multi-use pathway on Steveston and the health effects. So it could be something that could be moved around and measure and do some comparison study at different sites along Richmond. So yeah, I would like to give direction to staff to inquire with Metro Vancouver about these stations to perhaps add, instead of the more expensive large facilities that we have, that maybe these smaller units can be mobilized and moved around.
Well, it can't hurt to have the information. Any objection to that, or can we just make that a direction? All right, thank you. And 7B is number 5 Road in Cambie. I believe Councillor Heed wanted an update on the progress of the upgrades to that intersection.
Yes, and depending on the update, I may move a particular referral or direction.
Yes. So, Madam Chair, the update on the Cambie and number 5 Road intersection improvement projects is, it is progressing. As previously mentioned, there is some land acquisition required, and this process is continuing, and staff are working towards a goal of constructing this year.
So by the end of 2023?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd like to give direction, or if Madam Chair feels it's a referral, that a critical path be developed for this committee and for council in general, and that critical path be developed and reported back before the summer break of council.
Okay, is that going to be possible?
Councilor Day, yes, we can provide a critical path schedule before the council break. That should be
Okay,
no problem.
so that would be a direction then, I think. I don't believe anybody would be opposed to that. Okay, great. Let's see how that goes. All right, any other business? If not, I see a motion for adjournment. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Yes, manager's report. I know there are a couple. My apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An update to provide through you to committee, that TransLink has advised staff that the opening of the Capstan station has been pushed back a few months. The anticipated opening is now February of 2024. The last schedule that we had from them was that the station would be open for passengers later this fall. So there's a couple of months delay there.
Yeah, everyone's dealing with supply issues and staffing issues. All right, well, thank you for that update. Any questions? Okay, any other managers' updates? Okay, that's it. Then I call for adjournment.
Very good.
Thank you very much.